table full of family. Caught me by surprise. In addition to being an alcoholic, I'm a farm boy from Saskatchewan. I'm a coin machine operator. I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, I'm a great grandfather. And if it wasn't for this program, I wouldn't be any of those latter things. So you can be an alcoholic and still be drinking. But I'm an alcoholic. Look at the reward of my sobriety. I also, when I came into the program, was a rationalizer, compromiser, minimizer, maximizer. I was really good at that. You know, if it was my fault, I'd minimize it. If it was yours, I'd maximize it. I think that kind of runs part of the way through the veins. You know? We learn how to do that real young. I'm also a living miracle. I don't know if you know, but I know what percentage of people who come into Alcoholics Anonymous maintain sobriety. It's 3%. The other 97% die that way. They go down the road, broken dreams, teared by the bucketful, failures, complete and absolute defeat in the end. If you hear your story here, part of it from me, good. And if you don't, just go to another meeting tomorrow or the next day until you hear your story. Because what I have to say is unique to me to a degree. I'm pretty honest and explicit when I speak because I don't know how to really tell a story that people can relate to without calling a spade and a heart a heart. Gotta tell it like it is, and I've always tried to do that. I was an only child, farm boy, raised in a little farmhouse in Saskatchewan. My father died when I was 9 months old. My mother, she was educated, very intelligent, also a little bipolar, which had its moments. So I grew up very close to my grandmother, my grandfather, and my mother. My grandmother was strong and quiet. My mother was strong and not so quiet. My step-grandfather, Stanley, was truly loving, gentle, loyal, and strong. He was probably the best lover I ever met in my life. He had no children. I guess I was the only semblance of a son that he had. So what happens when you lose your father very young in life, there's many people that come through your life that sort of become part-time fathers. And I had many during the days that I grew up, one of them being Stanley. In Winnipeg, Manitoba, I had my first drink. It was kind of funny. My mother was with a fellow that she had just met, and they were having a party in a motel. And I think I was 5 or 6 years old, and I was 5 years old, and I was running around, and I had this bottle of, I think it was 5-star bottle, but it was empty. And I would go to everybody's drink, and I'd pour it into my 5-star bottle, shake it up, and I called that my medicine. I don't think I drank very much of it, but that's what I called it. I called it my medicine. And you know, it was almost fortuitous in that that's what it became. Because alcohol to the alcoholic becomes our medicine. No doubt about it. I then started on this little farm, and this is very important. It's not going to sound important at the moment, but it's very important. I started at about 5 or 6 years old. I used to lay on top of the International W9 tractor. I don't think there's too many people around here who know what a W9 is, but there's a few. There's a few. And a lot of the tractors were gas back then. And I would smell gas. I'd take the lid off the gas tank and I'd lay on top of that tractor and I'd smell gas. And it would get to a point where I'd see my face down on the gas, and then I would see my face in black and white, and then I would see moose and elk and all kinds of different animals down in that gas. And suddenly I'd get a spurt of energy and I'd go running across the pasture and through the foxtails, and you could hear them as you went through them, and they'd like a jet engine. You know, a year later we left the farm. And at that point in time, it was the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me. Broke my heart. Had to leave my bull and my little colt and my cat and my dog and my farm. I loved the farm. Yeah. But you know, God will go to great lengths to get what you need, or what He needs. He'll go to great lengths to protect us. My father figure, who lived on the farm with my mother, got to a point where they just couldn't stand the sight of each other. And so my mother, who was educated, as I said, she was a nurse, she decided to move to Regina. And I firmly believe that was all instrumented by God, my understanding, to save my life. Because smelling gas leads to serious brain damage. Maybe I got some, I don't know. But it can lead to death as well. And so sometimes what seems to be the worst possible outcome ends up being just what you need at the time. And I didn't even know that that was just what I needed at the time for 30 years later. And finally, when I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I realized what a blessing that was. We got to leave that farm. So we moved to the city. We moved to the city, and being in the city was my first experience of fear. Because here I was, this little guy in grade 2, and I'm going 10 blocks to Old Victoria School, walking, and had to walk by on 13th Avenue. There's the cathedral, the old cathedral. You had to walk by that cathedral. You see those pigeons flying in and out of the top of the cathedral. Oh my God, it just terrified me. And but I was fortunate. I was kind of big at the time, and so when I got to school, I would, I made some friends there. I was the defender always. You know what I mean? If there was a little guy by the name of Tony, he was a little China boy, and everybody picked on Tony, but they didn't pick on Tony Houser. And that kind of continued on, right, through life. It was the first time I felt like I didn't fit in. Because I came from a little classroom, 16 kids, Chickadee School, grades 1 to 12. I don't think we covered every grade, but grades 1 to 12. And to go to a school, Old Victoria, I think the student population of 500, was quite a different thing. Everything was different. There was no more laying on the grass and looking at the sun, looking at the clouds over your head, because you were kind of in a concrete jungle, you know? At least that's how it felt to me. It wasn't long before I discovered alcohol. Not long at all. As a matter of fact, discovered it quite young in life, and by the time I was 16, 17, 18, I was doing a lot of drinking. A lot of drinking. And I drank because it made me fit. It made me fit in. I always felt like I was on the outside looking in, but once I had a few drinks, I'd be on the inside, everybody else was looking in at me. It was a hell of a deal. So the question at that time would have been, why wouldn't have I drank? Anything that's that powerful, anything that makes you feel that good. The amazing thing would have been if you didn't use it, not if you did. Only a rip-off of alcoholism, or I believe any other addiction, over a period of time it takes more to do the same job. Never a better job, it's the same thing. So, when I was 14 years old working on the farm, it would take 2 beer to do the job. By the time I was 16 in the city, it'd take half a case of beer, and by the time I was getting into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a bottle of whiskey and a case of beer. And the problem is none of it ever worked any better than that original 2 beer. And in the end, you could drink it by the pailful, and it didn't seem to matter. If you drank enough to get emotionally comfortable, which is what I was trying to do, get rid of the fear, emotionally comfortable. If you drank enough to get emotionally comfortable, physically you were now so drunk that you could hardly walk. So it ceased to work. I was turned 18 on the 8th of March. I was married on the 9th. My son, sitting over there next to the blonde lady, Mike, he was the byproduct. Now he was born on the 19th, so it was a very busy month. His mother and I separated about 3 months after that, and then we moved to Edmonton to try to save the marriage. But it didn't work. It didn't work, and she moved back to Saskatchewan, and I stayed in Alberta, and that was pretty much the way it was. Got up to Grand Cache, Alberta when I was 19, and I was in business when I was 19 in Grand Cache. Started the movie business showing movies to construction workers. Had some merchandise vending going on there. And just do it this way. Some merchandise vending going on there. And I was pretty hot stuff, 19 years old in business, driving a new truck, right? Met this good-looking lady up in Grand Cache. Holy smokes. Fell head over heels for her. Her name was Jackie, right? And she was a beautiful gal, let me tell you. And the byproduct of the beginning of my relationship with Jackie is the guy sitting in the white shirt over there, Steve.
I'm Steve, I'm still an alcoholic.
Hi, Steve.
I gotta tell you a joke. There's this, 4 people are on a plane, and the plane is, it's gonna go down. The pilot comes and says, "You guys put your chutes on, it's all over. I can't save this thing, it's heading down." So there's only 4 chutes, or 3 chutes and 4 people. So you're gonna have to choose between yourselves who's gonna take the 3 chutes. So the first fellow says, "Well," he says, "I'm a doctor." He says, "I save all kinds of people's lives." He said, "So, it's beneficial for me to take the first chute." So he straps the first chute on, out the window he goes, or out the door he goes, whatever it was. Second guy says, "Well," he says, I'm a nuclear physicist. I know everything. I have more degrees than the thermometer, and I'm working on all kinds of scientific projects, so I should get the second chute." So he grabs another chute, and out the window he goes. Well, that leaves 2 people. There's an old man there, mid-70s. There's a kid about 15. The old man says to the kid, he says, he says, "I've lived my life. So you take the chute that's left, and I'll just go down with the plane because I got a lot of years." Kid looks at him and said, "No, don't worry, there's still 2 parachutes left." The old man looks at him and says, "What do you mean?" "Well," he said, "that guy that knows everything, he stole my backpack and jumped away." I was a good time drunk. I like to drink, I like like to have fun, I like to party, I like to cheat, screw around, flirt. Steve's mama, Jackie, she liked to flirt. She liked to party, she liked to fight. So we didn't, I think out of all the years, the 2 or 3 years that we drank together, we did not have any more than maybe 2 peaceful drunks. We were always fighting about something. I had an instance with Jackie where she was extremely intoxicated. You know, a fighting drunk is always easier to point a finger at than a party drunk. A party drunk is, oh well, you know what I mean. But a fighting drunk, that's a different deal. And I tell this, I even hesitate in front of my grandkids, but I tell this because I think it shows where we've come in addictions compared to where we were in addictions 50 years ago. She cut her wrists. We were in the trailer. She was at one end, I was at the other, and she cut her wrists. I didn't know anything about this, and I went back into the bedroom there, and there she was bleeding. And so I freaked right out, and I threw her over my shoulder, and I go down to the hospital. And we get to the hospital, and she gets into emergency, and the doctor stitches her up, and he's letting her out. And I said to the doctor, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You know, I fixed her now, she's gonna go." Well, I said, there's gotta be some reason for this. Because believe me, we knew nothing about alcoholism. We knew nothing about 12-step programs, Alcoholics Anonymous, any of that stuff. We knew none of it. It was all unknown. So, he says to me, "Well, Bruce," he said, "it's unfortunate, but some people just have to live that way." And I looked at him and I didn't say anything. But I wanted to say, and I said it inside, no. Nobody has to live that way. There's got to be a solution to this. There's got to be a reason for this. No drinking, no problem. Drinking, problem. There's a reason. So I phoned around and I had a mother that was a nurse, as I said, and she made some inquiries, and it turned out that Dr. Saul Cohen had opened a treatment center in Regina, Saskatchewan. I believe it was the first treatment center in Western Canada. And my mom said, "Well, apparently that's where people go that have problems with alcohol," and so we made arrangements for Jackie to go there. I did 20 questions when I was in family court, your mother's family court, mine. And I'm doing these, it's a quiz, right? I'm trying to pass the time. And 20 questions, oh, that's good, that'll kill some time, you know. Do you this? Yes, no, yes, no, yes. And then at the bottom, I read this thing at the bottom of this 20 questions, and it says, if you've answered more than 3 yes, you're definitely an alcoholic. I said, who the hell wrote this thing? I don't know anybody that is an alcoholic, other than maybe my mother. I had 13 yeses, for goodness sakes. And you know, the ones who were marginal, I'd take as a no. You know what I mean? Anyway, and I was right. I didn't know anybody who was an alcoholic. And I would go so far as to suggest that most of the people in this room that are AA members didn't know many people that weren't alcoholics when they were practicing. I associated with people that drank like me. I associated with people that they didn't pull out a bottle of whiskey and pour you one drink, but the bottle back in. They poured out a bottle of whiskey, we finished that one, and we went to get another one if I had one, and if we didn't have one, we'd go to the bootlegger work and how we had to go to get a bottle. But again, it's definition. And back then, there wasn't a lot of definition as to what the hell was and what wasn't. The only thing I knew about alcoholism is that my stepfather was an alcoholic, supposed to be, according to my mother. And I hated him to begin with. So I sure as hell didn't want to be anything like him. And my idea of an alcoholic was Skid Row bum sitting on a curbside, you know, begging for quarters or dollars or whatever the hell it was. Anyway, Jackie went to the treatment center in Regina, and she came out, and she got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous in Regina. Her sponsor was the sponsee of a guy that ended up being my sponsor. And things were looking very good. She came back to Grand Cache, and I had been to an AA office with her, and sometimes we give kind of a bad message sometimes, you know what I mean? And somebody had said in that AA office, oh, an alcoholic only drinks because they're an alcoholic. That's the only reason. There's nothing you can or can't do that's going to change that. So when she came back, I thought, oh, what the hell, you know? You're the alcoholic, I'm not, right? So we would play Risk or cards or whatever the hell we were doing with the rest of our friends, and all of us would drink, and I expected her not to, right? And that's brutal. You know, it's really brutal. It is. I didn't think so at the time. So we have to be careful sometimes in what we say, you know, as to what this definition is. Alcoholic only drinks because they're an alcoholic. Yeah, that's right, they do. But then again, if you're sticking it under their nose, it makes it a little tough, you know. We got into big money trouble in Grand Cache 72, and that too was an act of God. I was the right place at the right time. I was in a place where I got into money trouble. And cash can keep you going. I've met lots of wealthy drinkers, and they keep going much longer than they should because they can afford to. Me, it pushed me down in a hurry because I didn't have a lot of cash. I lost principles. I lost morals. My mother raised me to be quite a moral person. She raised me to know that to tell the truth was right. That men were true to their wives, and wives were true to their men. All these things. You were supposed to believe in God, which I did. And that's how she raised me. But as the drinking went on, very quickly, I started to lose my principles. And I started to become very immoral. The big book refers to it as total and incomprehensible demoralization. And that's what I suffered very quickly. Total and incomprehensible demoralization. Because nothing mattered anymore if I wanted it and I was drinking. There was no moral code anymore. It was gone. I had a guy who was a Bender drinker. He's a buddy of mine. I went down and picked him up in Calgary. And we're coming back to Grand Cache. And I had a deal. I never, ever, ever went out. I never cheated with women that were under legal age. And we picked up this gal on the highway, and she's hitchhiking from Calgary to Edmonton. And I'm thinking to myself, well, holy smokes, we'll get her in the bar and then we'll do some. Then I found out that she wasn't old enough. The only thing that stopped that from happening that night was the fact that she couldn't get in the bar, and I wanted to keep drinking. And it was more important that I drink than it was to do anything with her. As I said, I'm explicit. I think it's important. After the weekend, I took my buddy Charlie. I made an arrangement with his brother. His brother came up from Calgary as far as Jasper, and I went from Grand Cache to Jasper. So we agreed that we were going to meet in Jasper, and Charlie's brother was going to take Charlie back to Calgary, because Charlie was a Bender drunk, you know what I mean? He was fun for the first 3 or 4 hours, and then he was just he was just a pain in the ass. You know, he did things like go to sleep in his car when it was 20 below with the doors open, stuff like that. So you're babysitting, there's no more party. I took him to Jasper, and we went to an account of mine. I was in the vending business at the time. We went to an account of mine, and I don't know if you know those bowling benches, they go along the wall, and they're usually green and cream, and then green and cream. They're made out of fiberglass. And here's Charlie sitting on this bench, laying on this bench. He's got a Siwash sweater under his head. Hasn't shaved for a week since I picked him up for 4 days, whatever it was. His teeth are on the ground. And I'm looking at him from about here to that wall, and I say to myself, what a disgusting drunk. And then it happened. Then it happened. You see, I firmly believe that God gives us a gift. I don't know how many times, but I know He gives it to us at least once. And the voice of truth came through and said, and the difference between him and you, that a few more years isn't going to make, isn't going to change. And I thought, well, really, there is no difference. So I did what it says in all the time, which says we made clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that no human power could relieve our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if He were sought. And I said, dear Lord, help me to quit till Christmas time. Got in my car and drove away. And as it says, God could and would if He were sought. So I made it to Christmas. We went to Regina, and I met up with Jackie's sponsor. She was with me because Jackie was sober at this point. And I met up with the guy who ended up being my sponsor. And, we're just fighting each other all the time. Sober or drunk didn't matter. She was sober, I was drunk, didn't matter. And she says, we got in a big fight. So I decided I was going to go down to see George, which was her sponsor's sponsor, and we do her inventory. So I went down to George's store there, and Suter was 17 years sober, and he was a smart alcoholic. He knew where the bear shit in the bramble bush. And he was just waiting for me, and he says, oh, how you doing? He says, how do you like that? Oh, one night before I'd been to an AA meeting, ends up being my home group today in Regina. I'd been to an AA meeting, and it got going. It was Christmas Eve, and it got going around the room really quick. Hey, my name's Joan, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Sue, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Ben, I'm an alcoholic. I'm going so bad. Got to me, I said, my name's Bruce, and I'm an alcoholic. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I could have climbed under the carpet, let me tell you what. But then instantly, Jackie grabbed my hands for going up. She says, oh, honey, you were wonderful. I thought, yeah, you bitch, you think you got me now? I thought to myself, and instantly that keen alcoholic mind kicks in, and it says, what are you worried about? This is Regina. They live 800 miles away. That's Grand Cache. Only one I heard you say that was her, and no one's going to believe her anyway. So, we are at this meeting. She says, oh, honey, you're wonderful. I thought, yeah, you bitch, you think you got me now. So the next day, I went to see Suter. So Suter says to me, so how do you like this sober living? And I said, wow. I said, the sober living's okay. I said, but this business of going to meetings, calling yourself an alcoholic, I said, that is the most degrading experience on the face of the earth. I said, you know what? I said, I'd rather say that I have leprosy than I'm an alcoholic. So I did, undaunted. He didn't say anything. He's kind of one of those guys, that just knows he's waiting for a day. He says to me, oh, wow. He says, can you answer a question for me? I said, sure. He said, you got any trouble as a result of your drinking? I said, all kinds. Well, he said, good. Did you go to AA because you got into trouble as a result of your drinking? You don't have to admit you're an alcoholic to anybody. And I did. And I have for over 50 years now. If if you're new, limited time, I'm going to tell you, just keep coming back. Until the miracle happens. What's the miracle? The miracle is that you'll ask God to relieve you of your addiction, and He will, if He's sought. That's the miracle. And then in time, in my case, it was 2 years. I've met people that have gone to their first AA meeting, and they say, you know what? I went to 1 AA meeting, 2 AA meeting, I don't have any craving to drink at all. Well, that was not the case with me. I continued to have cravings for 2 years. And I fight it. On one such time, I went into It was a bad day in Grand Cache. Everybody in our group was drunk. Everybody was up and slip. Everybody. I'm the only sober guy. Please stop me. I'm going out of town. I'm fighting for my sobriety right now. And I'm mad. And I'm feeling sorry for myself. And the cop says, you got your driver's license registration. I said, you know that I got a driver's license. 4,000 people every come to town to me. You know I've got a driver's license and a registration. What the hell are you asking me? He says, well, I just want to see it. I said, look, I said, I had a day from hell. Either give me a ticket or let me go. He said, okay, go. So I get on my way to him, pulled down into the ditch, had a Volkswagen van, went to sleep for a while, and woke up, continued on into Hinton. As soon as I got to Hinton, there's 3 or 4 bars in Hinton, right? And that nagging is there. Well, shit, everybody got drunk, what the hell, we all sober up together, you know what I mean? But then the voice of truth is there, and it's saying, you know, Bruce, what you should do is you should go and you should see your sponsor in Hinton. Because I have 2 sponsors, one in Regina, one in Hinton. You never know where you're going to be. So I went to see Carl. And just to make it a little tougher, Carl was home. But his daughter was home. And this is how important little things that we do along the way, not what I did, what she did. I want to tell you about that right away. How important little things that we do along the way become in a person's recovery as time goes on. She said, well, look, she said, why don't you come in? She's quite experienced in AA. Her dad had 17 years as well. She said, Dad's going to be back soon. He said, I got a room here. It was like Mr. AA. She said there must be cassette tapes from 10 or 15, 20 different people. You could sit and listen to a tape. So I sat and I listened to a tape and decided I wasn't going to go to the bar yet. And then Carl came home. And he talked, and we talked. And just before she went to bed, she came into the room. She knocked on the door. Carl and I were talking. She came into the room. And she said, you know, I'm going to go to bed right now, and I'm going to pray that you make it tonight. And she said, I'm going to pray really hard. And she left and went to bed. Well, then my decision was made. I wasn't going to go to the bar that night. And I always tell that story when I talk about my story, my recovery, because it was so important. I don't know why, but here was somebody, almost a stranger, who was going to go and was going to pray for me. So I think, well, if this little girl was going to pray for you, who you hardly know, maybe you should be tough enough to do something on your own. Maybe you should go upstairs over to Carl's place and get a bed for the night instead of going to feel sorry for yourself in a bar. And that's what I did. God talks through people and thoughts. It's the only way my God ever talks to me. He puts a person in my path, and He will go to extraordinary effort to put the right person in my path that says what I need to hear at a particular time. Extraordinary effort. Goodness sakes, He got Frank and my mom fighting so that I left the damn farm so I didn't die of smelling gas when I was 5 years old, so he can go to extraordinary effort. You know, we all believe in algorithms. We didn't believe in algorithms 10, 15 years ago. We didn't know what the hell they are. But now we know what they are. We know that we do something on our computer or phone, we can just about count on an app coming up in the next little while that has to do with what we did on our computer and our phone. Right? Well, I would submit that our God acts the same way. He knows exactly what we need. He knows exactly where he needs to put that person in our path. He knows exactly what kind of thoughts he needs to put in our head. Once I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I became very active. We used to drive 90 miles. We had 2 meetings a week in Grand Cache. We started with 3 people in Grand Cache. Within a year, there was 25 people getting first-year birthdays. Everything was happening. They talk about promotion, attraction rather than promotion of health. And I go around my Volkswagen van and pick them up. Tonight's night for the meeting. You know. And they came, and it was a good deal. It was a good deal. We were told when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous we needed 3 things. One of those things has been dropped in modern age. We still talk about sponsorship and we talk about meetings, but we forgot about the lunch pay. We were advised to get a lunch pay. In other words, get a damn job. Get yourself busy. I don't know who the hell is going to stay sober if they're sitting around day after day after day doing nothing but feeling sorry for themselves and thinking about all the things that they haven't got or all the things that they want. So we did a lot. We drove 90 miles. We started visitation meetings. So District 5 in Alberta was Grand Cache, Hinton, Edson, Whitecourt, Jasper. So we started a thing called a visitation meeting. And what would happen is, say, they'd only run 8 months of the year. All would happen is, say, in September, everybody would come from Jasper and Hinton and Edson and Whitecourt and Cache. And then it got to the point where the gals would put up a little meal, you know what I mean? And these meetings started to be a big deal, you know, it's 30, 40, 50 people. And the next month we'd go to Hinton, and the next month we'd go to Jasper, Edson, on we go. So it was really a good thing, and it got people excited about AA, you know. And I'll tell you what, once I was 2 years sober, I was excited about AA. The obsession to drink had been removed. All the reasons that I had to drink, and I set out to do this, that too was important to me. I set out to be able to do anything sober that I once had to be drunk to do. And some of those things were great. My morality was still kind of pale, but nonetheless, I could do anything that I used to have to be drunk to do, I could do it sober. And that was important. Because when I look back on it now, that meant less reasons to go back. Why the hell do you want to go back? If you can go to a dance sober and have a good time, what the hell do you want to go to a dance drunk and wonder what you did tomorrow and maybe be sick as well? It was very important. There was a place. I'll tell you about my first experience of freedom. When I was drinking, leaving Edmonton, there was 4 things that I had to get by. I had to get by the New West Hotel. I had to get by Westmount Shopping Center's liquor store. I had to get by my buddy's place that lived right across the street from the New West Hotel. And I had to get by the Wildwood Hotel that was 60 miles down the highway. Now, usually what would happen is I'd stop at the liquor store, buy a bottle of whiskey, stop at my buddies, he and my wife, or he and his wife, would escort me, and we'd go over to the New West Hotel, and then Friday night would lead to Saturday night would lead to I'd get back to Grand Cache sometime on Sunday. Well, this particular time, obviously I wasn't drinking, so I didn't have to stop at the Westmount liquor store, and I didn't have to stop at the New West Hotel, and I didn't choose to stop at my buddy's, because that was one of the total, how can I put it, the demoralization. One of the worst things I ever did, I ended up getting caught in the sack with his wife, right? So I wasn't really too keen on stopping there. And that was in the drinking days. And so I got on down the road, and I stopped at the Wildwood Hotel. Wildwood Hotel, I'm sure that many of the people who have been around for a while have met hotel owners that know how to keep you. You know what I mean? You get in there, they might even buy you the first beer, but they know how to keep you, you know what I mean? This guy owned the Wildwood Hotel, his name was Ed Halundy, I still remember to this day. And I would always go there, and we operated games and jukeboxes, and I wanted to get a jukebox in this Wildwood Hotel in the worst way, I don't know why. But I wanted to get a jukebox in the Wildwood Hotel, and Ed was always expert at, well, we'll talk about that. I gotta check my contract. And then the next time he'd have to check with the liquor board. And the next time he was but there was always a way to draw it out. I'd end up staying the night in the Wildwood Hotel. I'd buy beer all night long. He'd buy the first one, then I'd buy beer all night long. Sometimes I'd buy a case and leave, but usually I'd stay the night. In any case, I would end up getting back to Grand Cache instead. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, right? And Ed did very well. This particular day, I'm sober. I passed the 3 places in Edmonton. I drive into the Wildwood Hotel, and this is my first sober sales call. I think it was 9 months, somewhere there. And I stop, I go up to the bar, and his wife's there, and I say, hi, is Ed around? Oh, hi, Bruce, how you doing? Can I buy you a beer? No, I'm just passing by. Can you get Ed? Yeah, okay, he's upstairs, I'll get him. He brings Ed downstairs. Ed comes down, can I buy you a beer? I said, no. I said, I'm not telling anybody I'm an AA member at that point. I said, a lot of police in the highway, you got breathalyzers now, and all this kind of crap, you know what I mean? I said, no, I don't think so. I said, I'll have a ginger ale. So we talked about the jukebox, it went nowhere as usual. In 15 minutes, I got up and walked out of the door, got into my Volkswagen van, and it hit me. Just like that. Freedom. My first real experience, conscious experience of freedom. I'd gone into a place that sold certain alcoholic beverages. I said no thank you to a drink on 2 occasions. Got into my van and continued on down the highway, and with any luck, I was going to get home that night. Free. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous gives you. One of the many things it gives you, but free was one. I don't know if everybody knows what to turn it over means, but it took a long time for me to learn what turn it over means in the program, because I didn't ask, right? And just for anyone that doesn't know, turn it over means stop thinking about it, right? We went to Castlegar, BC, and now I'm getting ahead of myself here. Maybe not. Step 4 and 5, to my way of thinking, means getting to know who you are. Getting to really know who you are, what you've done. If you get to know that, and you believe that, then you are capable of moving on to the program. I was so afraid of step 4 and 5. So afraid of step 4 and 5. And then after I did step 4 and 5, I find out that step 4 and 5 really isn't what I should be afraid of at all. Step 6 and 7 is what I should be afraid of. Because now I'm going to my Creator and I'm asking Him to remove my shortcomings. I'm ready to let go of my defects of character. My goodness, that's a big deal. When you're sober, I don't believe in lying to God. And there were certain defects and shortcomings that I was ready to be rid of. So after I did my step 4 and 5, it took me at least a year to get my step 6 and 7 done. We had, when I sobered up, $35,000 in small bills, business related, but they were all small. It was 1973. Just for fun, I Googled that recently. What's 35,000 from 1973 to today? Even I was shocked. 242,000. Anyway, I set out to pay those bills because that's part of step 8 and 9. You know, you're supposed to make amends. We don't talk a lot about that anymore in the AA either, about the financial amends. We talk about the personal amends, but we don't talk about the financial amends. I had a shitload of them. And I set out to straighten them out and get it done. And I did. It took 2.5 years to do it, but I got it done. Ended up building over the next 5 years, 4th largest independently owned coin machine company in Western Canada. But as that happened, Jackie and I separated, we split. I started missing meetings, and my ego and my business were growing at about the same rate, which was fast. And then in 1982 along came a bust that in a sense was nothing that was directly my responsibility, because it was brought on directly by the National Energy Policy, which our current Prime Minister's father passed at that time. And it made a hell of a mess for me. So all I was concerned about was saving the business, right? And it was difficult. My kids paid a big price for that because I had the 3 boys, and they paid a big price for that because I wasn't around a lot. I had housekeepers there, but I wasn't around a lot. And my obsession was to save the business, right? That was my obsession. Used to go and see my grandmother. She was suffering from early Alzheimer's in Aberdeen. I had to go once every 3 months. And I'd usually stop in and see her doctor first and find out how she really was. And then I'd go and see my grandmother, and she could tell me how she thought she was. And we'd try and make things as good for her as we could possibly make them. But we tried to make things as good for her as we could possibly make them. Turned out her doctor, I went and saw her doctor, which was a practice of mine, but this particular doctor was welcoming, and she came over to see my grandmother, and I don't know, I guess there was a mutual attraction, and she ended up being Mrs. Osiowy number 3. But you see, I didn't realize that being this doctor. Anyway, this doctor and I got married. She came into Alberta. She lived with my sons and myself. That 3rd daughter was there. Montana. She's a doctor too, as runs in the blood, I guess. And we decided we're going to build this family farm in Saskatchewan. We're in Alberta. But the problem became is that I had this wonderful wife, right? Educated, doctor, the whole bit. But I was doing very poorly. in a material sense of the word. And I ceased to be Bruce Osiowy and I became Dr. Osiowy's husband. So I guess I developed some resentments towards her because of that. I didn't think I needed to go to AA anymore because what the hell, I didn't have a drinking wife anymore. My wife was a social drinker. And I thought everything would be fine. But as it turned out, missing meetings, all I did was work and eat and sleep and work and eat and sleep. Seemed like everything I did at that point would go in the opposite direction. I just couldn't call it right. I came out here and took over the family farm in Abernethy. None of it worked. Still there, but it didn't work at that time. I thought agriculture was going to get us floating in 6 months or a year. Two good crops, that'd be it. I learned that it's closer to 42 good crops. It's definitely a generational business. So, so my self-esteem was in the tank, lost my identity, and of all the stupid things to do, I'm not going to meetings. The place that I could have got support, the place that I could have felt important, the place that I could have gone to make me feel better and to be capable of being a better husband, I avoided. And so, at the end of the deal, she left in 1996, that was 10 years later. And that rocked me to my socks. I didn't drink, but I'll tell you, I remember an episode with my daughter. She was about 4 years old. And I finally realized that her mama was going and she meant it. And we were sitting in this chair and she was crying, I was crying. She didn't want to go and I didn't want her to. But it was a very difficult time in life. Very difficult time. Brought on my own actions. Definitely. Because I had the answers. And so, I hadn't learned the word, the lesson that the spoken word can be as deadly as a fired bullet. And I was pretty good at speaking the word to her. And I could rip and tear pretty good with my mouth. Never did hit her. She accused me of abuse. I said, abuse? What kind of abuse? You know what abuse is? Verbal abuse, psychological abuse. I get over it. Well, when she left, I had a wake-up call, right? So I started going to 3 to 10 meetings a week, farming at the same time, private counsel. Went through anger management program, did it all. Did everything that I could possibly do to fix myself. She didn't come back. Because sometimes it's just too late. Too little, too late, and that's what happened that time. Just too little, too late. So she didn't come back. But I had the benefits of all the things that I had done for that 2 years as I was rebuilding myself. 3 to 10 meetings a week, private counseling, relapse therapy, anger management, all those things I had the benefits of. So, it's always the case. We receive the biggest and the first benefit for what we do in our recovery. No matter what the reason we do it for, we still receive the biggest benefits. 1998, my mama died. Her and I were pretty tight. We had our issues at times. As I said, she was bipolar, so it could be difficult. She was always there when I needed her. And I remember I went into emergency and she was, the doctor told me that, this is it. Oh, it's over. So I went over to her and I grabbed her hand Oh, Mom, you did okay. You did okay. You were always a good mom to me, and that's what you were supposed to be as far as I was concerned. Today, I go to 1, 2, 3 meetings a week. Done some service work over the years, ran a couple alcohons in Regina. My son Steve ran one after, the 2 that I ran. It says in our big book that those feelings of uselessness, self-pity will disappear. We'll lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook on life will change. During that period, it did. I was alone for 12 years after Carol left. Had a girlfriend in between though, and this is just to illustrate the difference. It was about 2 years after Karen left. First girlfriend. Because I, for once, kept my word. I kept my oath. I didn't go out with anybody until the divorce was over. And 2 years after Karen had left, I was such a mess. I described that to you. This girlfriend looked at my eyes and she said, "You know what I want from you?" I said, "No, what do you want?" She said, "I want your peace." So that's what's there for the doing. You know, the doing. I don't know how you are with your God, but my God's got to knock me to the ground and rub my nose in my own crap before he gets my attention. You know? He's really got to be very stern. And he gets my, oh, you want something? AA is an inseparable part of my life. I said I was alone for 12 years. After 12 years, I was praying for, I always pray for what I want, where I think I want, what I need. And I was praying for another life partner. And the good Lord sent me a brown one. She's over there, Susie. We've been married for 15 years, so I guess that just goes to show that anybody can change, you know, things can get better. I was very involved in the farm movement for a period of time. Another example of how God works in my life. We're seeding canary, 2003. And I'd say to my guy on the phone, I say, "Go load up enough canary to do a field, get it cleaned at Chuck's." Then this little voice comes in my head, voice in your head, person in your path. Clean enough canary for 2 fields. So I get back on the phone with Andrew, clean up enough canary for 2 fields. Little voice back in my head, "No, you want enough canary for 3 fields." Andrew, I said, "Andrew, make it 3 fields. Just pick the whole truckload. Get it cleaned up." Sure as hell, farm's in big trouble at that time, but canary hit 40 cents a pound. The next year, that's $10 a bushel. That's $20 a bushel, which was 4 times higher than it was when I seeded it. You know, so I was getting looked after. Don't think that God doesn't have anything to do with our finances, because He does. He does. I was very involved in the farm movement for a period of time. And yeah, that was rewarding for sure. Tell you that joke. 2 guys, they're sitting there and they're arguing about baseball. And one guy says to the other one, he says, "There's no baseball in heaven." You know, looks at him and says, "You're not in baseball in heaven." So they fight back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, make a deal. They say, "Look, if you die first, You come back and tell me if there's baseball in heaven. If I die first, I'll come back and tell you. Guy dies 2 days later. Night after that, the other fella, curtains are blowing, you know, the typical movie scene, right, in his window, in his bedroom, you know, the breeze is out there. And there's his buddy. And buddy says, what are you doing here? He said, I thought you died. Well, I did, but we made a deal. Oh, yeah, okay, is there baseball in heaven? Yes, he says there is, and you're pitching tomorrow. I just about learned a number of years ago if there's baseball in heaven. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but Blair mentioned it, so I'll go through it. I was picking stones with a stone picker, and the fingers that pick up the stones wouldn't go to the ground after a while. So I pulled it back by the trees, and couldn't get the damn fingers down. So I worked the hydraulics all directions, still couldn't get the fingers down because the transport arms had slipped down. So I put the hydraulics in a certain position. I took the transport arm out on the right side, went to take it out on the left side, very hard to get at. Had nothing, so I put a little pipe wrench in there and I banged on the end of the pipe wrench. Out comes the transport arm, and down come the reels on my hand. They squashed my hand into an area about this wide, this deep. And I even said, when it happened, I said, oh my God, it was agonizing. I said, I think this could be serious. I think this could be serious. And it was serious. It was serious. I was there for 3 days, 66 hours. At a time like that, you do a lot of praying, and you don't pray quietly, got no one else to talk to. And you beg and you plead, because you want to live, right? You want to get out of there. So the first thing I prayed for was a burden. That's if somebody can't stop thinking about you, and they just have to get a hold of you, and it worked. But I went to the wrong person. I went to a gal who was doing bookkeeping for us in the coin machine business, and she'd only started a month ago, so she was ashamed to go and ask anybody, you know, something's wrong with Bruce, right? And so then I prayed for a miracle, and I prayed and prayed and prayed. What I got was I got a northeast wind that blew day and night. Couldn't get away from it. Only direction you couldn't escape was a northeast wind. A wind from the north would have been blocked by the tractor. A wind from the south would have been blocked by a little dugout back there that had a bunch of mosquitoes in it, and water and bush. A wind from the west would have been blocked by some brush a little further down, but northeast, forget it. Nothing blocked it. And it blew day and night. At that time, it was very common for, you know, the winds would go down at night, not these nights, man. That wind blew, and it blew, and it blew. And you'd wake up in the morning, it was so cold you could see your breath. You see the steam coming out of you. And so I'm praying for this miracle, right? And I had my idea what a miracle is, you know. Someone's going to come along this down tree line, they're going to lift this machine off my hand. And my fingers were like this by hand, which is crazy. And nobody come along tree line. But the wind kept blowing. So finally I had a lot of hallucinations, and I had a Swiss Army knife on me, and I cut off my thumb and this finger to get out. And finally I pulled myself out of there. Cell phone had been ringing for days, but it was a bag full. It was in my tractor cab. And I couldn't get to it, obviously, right? So once I got out of there was a little gal sitting on the side of the field. Didn't say a word. Just a gal sitting on the side of the field. And I'm thinking, like, who are you? But I talked to her and I said, I have to go and I have to, I'm going to go and have a little sleep. I took a liter of water that was in the tractor and drank it just straight down. Fell down on my knees as I was going around that tractor. And that's why I was dying. I was thirsty. You know, they say 3 minutes no air, 3 days no water, 3 weeks no food. That's getting pretty close to 3 days. And so I walked around the tractor, fell down on my knees, and I said to this girl sitting there, for some reason I thought I was custom seating because I did that springs back then. And I said, I had my hand wrapped up in a sprayer manual. I said, I got my roast beef here. I said, so when that woman brings the rest of the supper, just wake me up, I'll have it, and then I'll go and I'll finish this seating. And this gal was sitting there, she didn't say a word. So the phone rings and rings and rings. Phone rings again. It's my son Mitchell. And he said, what's happening? I told him all these stories and he thought I'd lost it completely. And then I looked back and I had this water in my system now, so things were getting to be a little clearer. And I said to myself, oh, yeah, this is what happened. So he got Johnny on the spot, calls the ambulance, calls people around from where I am. Angie is Mitchell's wife. Angie. Anyway, ex-wife. And PJ was Miss Mitchell's last girlfriend. Anyway, I got on a tractor and I drove in and I realized that this was a miracle. Yeah, it was a miracle. But I wasn't convinced. A cousin of mine came to see me. He's kind of a religious cat. And he'd come to see me in the hospital, and I told him this whole story about the miracles and all that kind of stuff. And he says, well, I guess you mentioned miracle first, didn't you? I said, how do you figure I prayed for someone to come and give me oxygen? He said, because, he said, how would 30 above the mosquitoes have been? Well, 30 above the mosquitoes would have killed me. Because there was all kinds of mosquitoes right behind the shoulder, right in that little flu there. But I got that northeast wind. And I firmly believe I got a northeast wind. God chose to keep me alive. Because he'll go to any length. Any length. So the ambulance came and took me into Regina. And ambulance came and took me into Regina. And that story took on a life of its own. It became front page news across the country. Reader's Digest did a big article on it, and it became a big deal. We tried to invent something before cell phones came. It was an item you'd wear around your neck if you got stuck in a position like that. Because I'm thinking about this, and I'm saying to myself, how the hell can I be dying here? And they've got technology that'll steer tractors up and down the field. How can I be dying? How can this possibly be? I don't know. Anyway, we had this thing invented and we tried to pitch it, but farmers were poor at that time. We couldn't pitch it. It was just a little pendant went around. You push the button and sent a signal up to a satellite, and that went down to a monitoring center in Calgary, and you'd have a longitudinal, latitudinal fix on where you were. And it didn't work, but that was okay. Mitchell came out that year and he said to me, he said, well, Dad, you want me to help you with harvest? Or, yeah, there's harvest coming up. I said, well, son, it's up to you. You're going to have to do what you think you should do. And he said, well, I'll think about it for a few days. He thought about it for a few days. He was supposed to be going on to another trade school that he was involved in at the time. He came to me and he said, he said, I can hardly see how I can't come and help you for harvest. So he came and helped for harvest. The same Mitchell passed away Good Friday this year. He's 46 years old. Big, strong, good-looking, smart tradesman guy. Best dad I think I ever met. 4 kids. He passed away on Good Friday. He passed away from a fentanyl overdose. That stuff is killing people everywhere. Everywhere. I've talked to 2 people here already today, in addition to myself, that have had that horror. Doesn't seem to spare the good ones, you know what I mean? I could never figure it out because Mitchell had 2 years of sobriety at one point, you know? Could never figure it out. How, this is a religious kind of guy. Like he was a big believer in God the whole day. And I'm saying, how could it possibly be that you, of all people, don't get this program? And I think I know that now. I'm not sure, but I think I know that. And I think because he didn't do what it says at the end of chapter 5. God could and would if he were sought. He was religious. Great believer in God. But I don't think he wanted to kind of throw in the towel completely. He wanted to have that little edge every once in a while. We had the freedom to go and do what it was that he wanted to do. So there you go. It's no respecter of anyone, anything. Serenity prayer doesn't say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and blame the things I can't change, which are other people, for all my problems now and forever. It doesn't say that. I hear a lot of that around AA. I got dropped out of my crib on my head. My father was abusive. My mother was an alcoholic. Serenity prayer doesn't say that. Serenity prayer says, God grant me serenity, accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. What? I always know the difference. It's all a choice deal. That's what it is. I think at times we're kind of over psychologizing Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, in how it works, it says how it works. Right? Rarely we see a person fail who has thoroughly followed their path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So I guess part of how it works is honesty. Total, complete, absolute honesty. And then it goes on to say that God has to be involved, may you find it now. So it's honesty in God. That's what it's about. Then AA comes in and guides us through. But the 2 ingredients that we need are honesty. 100% complete, total honesty. You know, a part of the story is as bad as a lie. In a lot of cases. Hurts to be honest sometimes. I mean, do you think I like telling you guys about sleeping with one of my best buddies with wives? But you know what? Maybe one of you guys did the same thing. And you go later. So honesty is important. It's really, really, really important. Honesty in God. And then I kind of, you know, I kind of got to a place where just recently, I was thinking about, you know, the way those steps are set out. Step 1 is admission. That's honesty. Step 2 and 3 get us closer to God, to a God of our understanding, which gives us the fuel to do the next hard thing, the hard, honest thing, which is step 4 and 5. And then step 6 and 7 gives us more fuel to go on and do the next difficult thing, which is step 8 and 9 and 10. It's so damn easy when you just get the habit of being honest. I'm going to wrap this up. I've got, here's my little girl over there, the most recent, Alexandra. My son Mitchell's oldest son, Noah. You met Steve's wife, Dolores.
Mike.
Mike's wife, Dolores.
Gotta be honest.
Elijah, Steve's son, one and only. Linda, sitting at the end of the table there, is Steve's ex-wife. See, this program allows for forgiveness. BJ, as I said, was Mitch's last girlfriend. Lisa is my oldest granddaughter. She's the one who made me a great grandfather. I think Lawrence is in love. She's Steve's oldest. Then there's Danielle, which is Steve's youngest, and her beau. Came all the way from Prince George, BC. Yeah. There's Joseph there next to Angie, which was Mitchell's youngest son. You miss a great dad, lot, see. No, you really do. But Noah's really stepping up to the plate in that case. So is his mama. Angie's got 6 months under her belt now. I'm going to tell you one more story and then I'll wrap this up. There's a man sitting in his easy chair. I love my easy chair. His little boy comes running in and he says, "Dad, will you play with me?" This is Saturday. What? I don't want to play with you right now. Go and amuse yourself. I'll play with you in a little while. Well, you know, a little while is to a kid. 5 minutes later, kid's back. "Daddy, will you play with me? I'm lonely. I need someone to play with. I'm bored." No, he says, I'll play with you later. He said, later, just give me a little time. A few minutes later, kid's back again. So finally, the old man, he's looking at this magazine, and in the center of the magazine, there's a picture of the globe. So he takes and pulls out the centerfold, and he rips it into tiny pieces. And he puts them all on a piece of cardboard and says, "Here, when you put this back together perfectly, I'll play with you." To the old man's dismay, the kid arrives in 10 minutes and everything is put back together perfectly. The old man can't understand how that happened. He said, "How did you put it together perfectly so quickly?" And the kid says, "Well, Dad, when you were ripping it up, I noticed that on the other side of the picture of the globe is a picture of a man. And I put the man back together. And the rest of the world just naturally fell into place, which is what we do here." Thank you.